All right, I'm going to talk about the access request management system that we have in place here for the Fuse platform. So as a system administrator, it's going to be your responsibility as we move through this project to grant access to external users, which could be Fuse employees. It could be employees of a partner of Fuse who's helping you with the deployment. So there's those external access requests that may be coming into you as the system administrator, as well as internal requests for access to the Fuse platform, like your own employees and team members, which you can manage yourself. I'm going to show you some elements of how the external access request is initiated. These next several steps have absolutely nothing to do with you. It's just so that you have an understanding of what we as external users go through in order to request access, and then you're the recipient of these access requests. So first thing is we would go into our main administrative environment for all of our Fuse customers. Once I'm in there, I have a screen called My Enterprises. And this is where I would go to request access to a new Fuse customer that maybe I'm going to be supporting the implementation of, or answering a question, or whatever the case may be, maybe helping you troubleshoot something or helping you develop a report. Whatever the reason is, that justification is going to lead me to submitting this request form. So the first thing I would do is select your enterprise and then which environment I need access to. So as you know, you may or may not have a build, but you'll generally always have a QA and a production. So I need to request access to one of those environments in particular. Generally, if it's to help you with a report or troubleshoot something or help you create something new or answer some type of technical question, usually that's going to require us to have access to the build environment. And we're going to need full, complete administrative access. But that part of it is on you. All we can do is request access. It's then your responsibility as the system administrator to give us the proper level of access based on what we need to accomplish. If it's merely being able to log in and maybe look at something and assess something, but not have access to the back end of the application to actually see what's happening, then web access would be appropriate in that case. If it's anything else, it's going to have to be administrative access that you grant us as a role within that particular environment. I'm going to go ahead and select build, and then I have to figure out which tenant or tenants within that environment I am going to need access to. So when you need help or support from us or one of our partners, it's above all very important to tell us which environment you need us to help you with, and then which tenant or tenants within that environment you need help with. Simply just reaching out and saying, I need some help, is not going to be enough information for us to complete our access request. I then have the ability to request a certain number of days. So our default is 14 days, which is plenty of time to help you with any type of support ticket type situation. But during an initial system deployment, that's not going to be enough time. At the conclusion of the requested access days, my user access will be cut off. I will be locked out, and then in order for me to gain access to your system again, I would have to submit another request to you for you to approve, or you could go in and unlock my user manually. I'm going to go ahead and set this to 90 days. We have an internal issue key that we're able to put in here, which would link this access request to a specific support ticket, which is important for us to maintain our SOC compliance as your provider. So you may see a link to that issue come through. So for example, if you were to log into the Fuse community, submit a support ticket, and one of our support staff needed access to your environment, you would then see that request come through with that issue linked attached, so that way you could verify that this is a legitimate request for access to your system and not some type of phishing scam or something like that. So I don't have an actual key, so I'm going to just put a fictitious number in here. The request reason is always going to be required, so generally the person requesting access should give you some type of information as to why they're requesting access. So I'm going to say that I was asked to provide support on building a new report. I can go ahead and submit this. Now, when I create this request, it doesn't get submitted right away. So I have the ability as an external user to set up multiple requests in advance. So I'll go ahead and create that request, and we can now see that that's at the top of my screen. Once I've done that, I have to then submit these requests. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this request. And what this is going to do now is it's going to email the system administrator associated with that particular enterprise. So that's likely going to be yourself. It could be others within the organization as well. But you're going to receive an email to your standard email, whatever you have registered with Fuse. And then there's going to be a link within that email. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this request because I am the administrator or one of the administrators of that environment. I should, in a few moments, receive an email, and I'll show you what that will look like next. So I did just receive the email, came into my Outlook inbox, and you'll see here that it's a Fuse site access request email. So it comes from mail@admin.fuse.app. So you'll need to make sure that you have this email whitelisted. Otherwise, this may go to your junk or spam folder, and that would not be good, because if we're trying to help you and it's an urgent situation, this is going to prevent our ability to access your system and give you any support. So as you can see, I'm receiving this as the admin. So this is exactly what you would see as a system admin. You'll see the enterprise I'm requesting, the environment, build, and the tenants listed out here. I'm going to see the access type is not provided, which means you as a system administrator need to make sure that you give me the correct access type, which would be administrator typically if I'm helping you with anything of a technical nature. It gives me the URL for the site. It gives me the submitter or requester's information. So I have the email address of myself. Since I'm the one that submitted this request, this would be our support tech or anyone else on the team needing access, as well as our name, and then when the requested access is going to expire. So that's actually for the request itself, not the access. So these requests are submitted, and if they're not approved within a certain time frame, as you can see here, roughly 3 days, then these requests automatically expire. So then I would have to submit another request to you as the admin if this were not answered. You can see the requested access days. There's that support issue. This link will then take you to that support issue in your community portal. So you would have to be an administrator and you would have to have access to the community for that link to work, but that will take you directly to that support ticket. And then you can see the request reason. Now, as the site administrator, you're going to click on the review request in Fuse. When you click review request in Fuse, it's going to take you to your enterprise and it's going to ask you to log in if you haven't already logged in. As you can see here, it's saying there's an external user access request that I'm being asked to approve. On the left-hand side of my screen is all the same information that was presented to you in the email. It also verifies or validates that the person requesting access is a Fuse team member. So it's verifying my email against our Fuse Active Directory. Now, this will not look the same if this were coming from another partner, implementation partner of ours. You can see here that it's an existing user account and it's already active, and existing access expiration on this account is set to never. I requested 90 days of access, but my new access expiration will also be never. So because I'm already a user in this environment, I was already created, maybe by the result or maybe not of the result of a previous access request. It's already found that I had existing access and that I already had some parameters configured around that. So those existing states are going to take precedence over this new request. It says this user's access won't automatically expire unless an explicit access expiration is set on the user's account. So what this means to you as a system administrator is if my access won't automatically expire, then you're going to be responsible for ensuring that at some point down the road, any users that have access to your environment, that maybe no longer work for the company, maybe no longer work for the partner organization or the external organization, you'll have to manually inactivate those user accounts. Otherwise, they would still technically have access to your enterprise. So this is a helpful feature that allows you to not necessarily have to remember to do those things or follow up on those things. So highly recommended that you do set access expiration, especially on external users, as you likely would not be notified in all cases if someone were to, for example, leave our company or leave one of our partners' companies. Here's going to be a list of all of the tenants that I requested access to. Now, if you remember, when I submitted that access request, I actually selected 3 tenants. However, I did not submit all 3 of those requests. Remember, it created the request, then I had to do a second step to go in and submit that request to you. So those other ones haven't arrived yet. If I did submit all 3 of them, all 3 of them would show up here in the list for me. And because I already have access and I'm already active, this checkbox is not checked, right? So if I did not have access and or my user was not currently active, then the grant access checkbox would already be checked for me. The significance of this is that if you look to the right-hand side, it's going to give you some additional follow-up information here. So it says approving this access request will perform the following actions. This is very important for you to pay attention to. Nothing. So, because I already have access, there is nothing that is going to take place whether I approve or reject this request. If I want to remove access for this particular user, I, as the enterprise admin, would go to my admin tenant. I would find that user at the enterprise level. I would select the user and I would block their access manually. I cannot do that from within this form. So once this is approved or rejected, the decision is going to notify the person who submitted the request. As you can see here, that's going to be my email that you see over here on the left-hand side. So it's indicating here that you should review the request thoroughly and approve it only if it's legitimate and warranted. If you're getting access requests from anyone and the requested reason doesn't seem to be warranted, then do not approve the request. You can reject the request, which will then give you the option to provide a reason as to why you're rejecting the request. Maybe you need more information because maybe you yourself are going to be audited at some point. If you approve the request, which I don't have the ability to do because I already have access, if I approve the request, it's going to grant this user access to the system, and then it's going to prompt me to associate this user with some roles. As you can see here, I have a link that will take me to add roles to this user without having to go and fumble through my system. So now it's already navigated me to that user record. So if I click on details, I'll see that's the user, and it took me to the role page here where I can associate the appropriate roles and make it a default. So you should have an administrator role or some other roles within your application depending on which tenant the user is requesting access to. The reason why I can't submit a request to you with a predetermined access level is because every tenant has different access security control policies in place, potentially. So there's no way for me to know as an external user what's available for me to request. All we can tell you is that as a system admin, you have to consider why this user is requesting access in the first place, and it's your responsibility to provide and grant the appropriate level of access. Too much access is on you, and too little access is also on you. So if you grant too little access, that user may be able to log into the system, but may not be able to provide the level of support that you expect. In that case, I would expect that user to communicate that with you via email or via the support ticket, if that were a support-related case, to indicate to you that they have gained access. However, the level of policy and permission or roles is insufficient for them to perform whatever duties need to be performed. It's very important that you remember after granting access that you go and approve and provide that user with some specific roles. Otherwise, they will simply be able to gain access to the tenant, but they will not be able to navigate. They will not be able to run any queries. They won't be able to get to any screen or application within that tenant. So essentially, that access will have not been very useful for them to be able to help you out with whatever the situation is. Once you've granted the access, this screen will flip and it will automatically recommend that you go and apply additional access through user roles for this particular user. Access requests like this are per user. However, a single access request can grant access to multiple tenants. So if you have multiple team members that need access, you will have multiple user access requests. So this covers and completes the discussion on external user access requests.